Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more English story. Loneliness. I used to think loneliness was about being alone in a room, the absence of voices or the silence that filled the spaces in between. But the truth is, loneliness often hides in the crowd. It's sitting in a packed cafe with your thoughts as your only company, or scrolling endlessly through your phone, hoping for a message that never comes. For years, I carried loneliness with me like a shadow. At work, I wore a mask of confidence, laughing at jokes I didn't find funny, nodding along to conversations that didn't matter. At home, it was just me, the quiet hum of the refrigerator, and the echo of my own thoughts. I told myself it was fine. This is what independence looks like. I said, who needs anyone else? But late at night, the emptiness would creep in, wrapping itself around me like a cold fog. I'd wonder, was it me? Was I too distant, too hard to approach? Or had I simply grown invisible over time? One day, as I stood waiting for the train, I caught my reflection in the glass. I looked tired, not just physically, but in a way that went deeper. That moment hit me harder than I expected. I realized I was stuck in a cycle, hoping for connection but too afraid to reach out. That's when I knew something had to change. The first step to breaking free from loneliness was the hardest. Admitting it. For years, I convinced myself that being alone was my choice. But deep down, I craved connection, I just didn't know how to ask for it. One evening, I decided to take a small risk. I reached out to an old friend, Sarah, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I typed a simple message. Hey, it's been a while. How have you been? My heart raced as I hit send, half expecting no reply. But she responded within minutes. Her words were warm, filled with genuine surprise and joy. I've missed you. Let's catch up soon. That message was a lifeline. We met for coffee the following week, and as we talked, I realized something profound. Loneliness had made me believe that I was unworthy of connection. But here was someone who remembered me, who valued me, despite the years of silence. From that day, I began to take more chances. I joined a local book club, even though the idea of walking into a room full of strangers terrified me. I volunteered at a shelter, spending weekends helping others. Slowly, the walls I had built around myself started to crumble. One day, during a quiet moment at the shelter, an elderly man named Peter shared his story with me. He'd lost his wife years ago and spent most of his days alone, just like I once did. I thought loneliness was my punishment for outliving everyone, he said, his voice trembling. But then I realized, the world is still full of people waiting to meet me. I just have to take the first step. His words stuck with me. Loneliness isn't something that happens to us. It's a state we can change, if we're brave enough to try. Now, when I look back at those days of isolation, I don't feel ashamed. They taught me resilience and the value of human connection. I've learned that it's okay to need people, to ask for help, to let others into your life. Loneliness doesn't define me anymore. Instead, it reminds me of where I've been and how far I've come. Moral: Loneliness can feel overwhelming, but it's not permanent. Taking the first step, reaching out, connecting, and opening up can transform isolation into belonging. Remember, the world is full of people who want to meet you. You just have to be brave enough to take that step. As time went on, my perspective on loneliness continued to evolve. I learned that it wasn't about having a constant presence of people around me. It was about genuine, meaningful connections. I stopped trying to fill the empty spaces with distractions or meaningless conversations. Instead, I began to prioritize quality over quantity. I started to notice the subtle ways in which people reached out, and I learned to be present in those moments. A smile from a neighbor, a shared laugh with a coworker, a simple message from an old friend. It was in these small, yet significant exchanges that I found solace. One evening, I sat in a quiet park, watching a couple of kids chase each other across the grass. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden light over everything. I felt content, not because I was surrounded by a crowd, but because I had finally made peace with my own company. I didn't need to be busy all the time. I didn't need to constantly search for connection. I had learned how to be whole on my own, and that made all the difference. Still, the journey wasn't over. Every now and then, loneliness would creep in, especially during challenging times. But now I saw it differently. It wasn't something to fear or avoid. It was simply a part of life, a temporary feeling that would pass as long as I kept moving forward. That night, I decided to make another change. I started to reach out more often, not just to friends or family, but to new people, too. I volunteered to mentor a teenager in my community, hoping to offer some of the support I'd once received. In doing so, I discovered something incredible. Giving back filled me in ways I never expected. The more I shared my time, my attention, and my energy with others, the less loneliness seemed to hold power over me. I realized that true connection wasn't about being needed, it was about showing up, supporting others, and creating bonds that were built on empathy, not dependency. One day, after a long conversation with a fellow volunteer, I realized that I wasn't just offering support. I was receiving it too. He shared with me how my encouragement had helped him overcome some personal struggles, and how our conversations had meant so much to him. It was in that moment that I realized the cycle of loneliness was broken, not because I had learned to fill every void, but because I had learned to be there for others. And in turn, they had been there for me. Moral: loneliness is a temporary feeling that can be transformed by making meaningful connections with others. It's not about having a crowd around you, but about learning to appreciate your own company, reaching out to others, and offering support. When you give, you receive in ways you never expected. True connection isn't about being needed, it's about showing up for each other. I'm so glad you spent this time with me. If you liked the story, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Take care, and see you next time.